Hello everyone, welcome to today's podcast. I am your host Apur, presenting to you Azadi ke Senani. We are extremely pleased to have the stalwarts of India's freedom movement as our guest for today's podcast. This is just an attempt to know more about them, and as a host, I'm glad to inform you that my schoolmates who are going to appear as Azadi Kisenani at our studio today have done a lot of research to find out every minute detail about their lives. Yet, I'm obliged to say that they are purely fictitious and their opinions are nowhere related to the actual perceptions of our freedom fighters. Before we begin, I, on behalf of my mates, offer our unconditional apologies but know that we have no intention whatsoever to distort history. Let me introduce to you Master Amitesh as Mahatma Gandhi, Master Sahil as Mr. Subhash Chandra Bose, Master Vishesh as Mr. Bhagat Singh, and Master Arkin as Mr. Veer Savarkar. Now we will begin with the interview. Mr. Gandhi, it's a pleasure to have you here with us today. We are keen to know about your family.
Okay, so if you want to know about my family, I don't remember that much, I'm an old man and so. But let me tell you some things that I remember. So I was born on 2nd October 1869 at Porbandar, Gujarat. My father, Karamchand Gandhi, was a diwan at my birth city, Porbandar and Rajkot, also in Gujarat. My mother was Putlibai. She was a homemaker, and I was married to Kasturba at the age of just 13. That's quite young, isn't it? I also had four sons, Harilal, Manilal, Ramdas, and Devdas.
Oh, we are glad to know about your family. Mr. Gandhi, what propelled you to join India's freedom movement?
Okay, so I was in South Africa for many years and also organized many successful movements against racial discrimination in South Africa. After these movements, I gained respect as a nationalist and an organizer. Then I was invited to India by my mentor and guide, my fellow mate, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, who was a senior leader of the Indian National Congress, to join the Indian national movement against British rule. So I returned to India in 1915. After that, I traveled various parts of the country where Gokhale guided me about the political situation in India and also the social issues of the time. And with this, I joined the freedom struggle.
That's amazing to know how South African freedom movement inspired you. What were the biggest challenges you faced, Mr. Gandhi?
So there were actually quite a few challenges which I faced during the struggle for India's independence movement. Now, one of the biggest challenges for me was to convince the people of India to believe in truth and especially non-violence. Also, to get people of India united. Also, my objective in India's freedom struggle was to make Indians fearless against the British rule. For that, I traveled across the country, stayed with people for months, organized and led them to raise their voice against the ruthless torture of the British.
Mr. Gandhi, after 75 years of independence, it is observed that the conflict between India and Pakistan is still unresolved. Now, when you take a close look at what is happening, do you regret your decision of partition?
Yes, absolutely yes. I regret my decision today as well. I never ever wanted the partition of India. For me, Hindus and Muslims are the sons of the same soil. Many people think that Hindus and Muslims are too different to be in one country. But that's not actually true. You know, I also offered Muhammad Ali Jinnah to become an interim Prime Minister of India, but he denied that. At that time, for the first time, Congress ignored my advice, and that was so sad for me. I opposed partition, but almost all leaders of the Muslim League, the Indian National Congress, and British government wanted this partition. But I had to accept it because of the communal rights happening then in India. Many leaders and I thought that the situation would become worse if partition would not take place. But even today, I feel guilty for not firmly standing against the decision of partition of India.
Thank you, Mr. Gandhi. Now we have Mr. Bose for the interview. Mr. Bose, we are proud of you, the bravest son of India. You set us free long before India was officially declared free from the bondage of the British. We would be glad to know a little about you and your family.
Thank you for inviting me to the studio today. I was born on January 23rd, 1897, in Otek, Orissa. My father, Janki Nath Bose, was a real famous lawyer. My mother, Prabhavati Devi, was a religious lady. I was the ninth child among my 14 siblings. I feel blessed and privileged to be born by such a wonderful family.
So you had a pretty decent upbringing. Impressive. India would listen to you pouring your heart to them, dear Subhash. Please convey your message to the fellow Indians through the podcast.
One individual may die for an idea, but that idea will, after his death, incarnate itself in a thousand life. My message to my people is that your idea or your ideology should be your first priority. If you will do your work wholeheartedly, you will definitely succeed. As you have seen me and Mr. M.K. Gandhi working for our idea to see India independent, we have done everything possible and not at all surrendered before any problem. We went walking through our path, and now, in the result, we are celebrating 75th Independence Day this year. So, my only message is not to drop your idea due to the problem. In fact, you should solve the problem by trying. I feel really proud to see where India is today. On this day, I want to remind my countrymen my call. Give me blood, I shall give you freedom.
I hope the future generation takes your message positively. Mr. Subhash, you had been a bright student all through, and had you joined Indian civil service, you could have lived a happy life. What led you to give up all comfort and join Indian freedom movement?
Yes, you are absolutely right. I could have lived a happy life with my job, but not at all at the cost of my nation. I was really disturbed due to the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. I saw India struggling for freedom, so I wanted to do something for my soil. So I left Indian civil service in 1921 and joined the freedom struggle. According to me, it's better to live a life of a common man in my country instead to live under the British.
Thank you, Mr. Bose. We will now be interviewing Mr. Bhagat. Mr. Bhagat, you're one of the most recognized personalities for your contribution in India's freedom movement. We would be very happy to know about your family.
Thank you for calling me back. I am extremely elated to return back. Today I got the chance to vibrate my vocal cords after 9 decades. I'll tell you the background. In the village of Punjab named Banga, I was born on 27th September 1907. My father Sardar Kisan Singh Sandhu and my uncle Sardar Ajit Singh Sandhu, they both were revolutionaries, and my mother Vidyavati Kaur used to look after my home. I completed my schooling from the Anand Anglo-Vedic School, which was at Lahore, and then I earned my degree of Bachelor's of Arts from National College, which was also in Lahore. I was an enthusiastic reader, writer, and actor as well. At the age of 21, I completely read more than 50 books. I used to write articles for various magazines also.
Oh, that's awesome, Mr. Bhagat. It seems that you were born to take the ideals of your family further. Mr. Bhagat, we would like to know what inspired you to walk on the path of revolution.
Well, particularly I was affected by Jallianwala Bagh massacre. And yes, that violence you remember, that violence against the unarmed Akeli protester at Nankana Sahib. I was 12 years old when I went to Jallianwala Bagh. After that massacre, I still remember that mud which had blood stains of those innocents who left us that day. That day, I decided to take revenge. I took that blooded mud into a bottle and carried that bottle everywhere I used to go. That bottle used to remind me that day of brutality. And also, when Gandhiji withdrew the NCM movement in the wake of Chori Chora incident, that also had a great impact on me. After that, I joined Hindustan Republic Association and got involved in the revolutionary activities. Then I participated in several sabotage against British institutions, including in an attempt to bomb the Central Legislative Assembly in Delhi.
That seems like an inspiring story. What was the main objective and ideology of HSRA, Mr. Bhagat?
The ideology was based on the idea of Karl Marx, which favored communism, socialism, and revolutions. According to me, the revolution means present order of thing, which is based on manifest injustice, must change. The purpose was common, and that was to overthrow the British rule in India and replace with Federal Republic of the Union States of India.
Amazing. Mr. Bhagat, how far do you feel the sacrifices made by you have been justified after 75 years of independence?
Only my sacrifices weren't sufficient to free India from those whites. Even thousands of my brothers had sacrificed their lives. But yes, my contribution sparked then fire among countrymen to stand against the British. I still notice those goosebumps which remind them about their duties. For my country, I devoted everything I could, and that thing itself had given me the justification.
Well said. Thank you, Mr. Bhagat.
Thank you. Inqilab Zindabad.
We now have Mr. Savarkar for the interview. Mr. Savarkar, you were criticized all through the country for a petition to the British government, begging for pardon for the Kala Pani punishment you received. You were also labeled as an anti national at some point. How do you feel about that?
I am glad to have this opportunity to justify myself. Everyone contributed in India's freedom movement in different ways. Some chose violence, others chose the way of non-violence. But I was a bit different. I decided to spread awareness through my poetry. I was a poet and I was just doing my work. Was that a crime?